Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair, and today I am so excited to introduce my guest. He is the host of the Deep Dive podcast. His skill set is varied yet congruent. Without fail, his potent spoken word poetry and deeply moving multimedia creations take the viewer on a transformational journey that leads to a greater self-awareness and compassion for all life. His ability to see the big picture and translate highly complex concepts into tangible results makes him a highly sought-after human optimization strategist. Whether he's supporting high-impact individuals in creating profitable businesses, captivating audience from the screens and stages, or facilitating breakthroughs at workshops and retreats, he shows up to life with consistent excellence and soul-inspired passion. Welcome to the show, Adam Roa. What's up, man?
What up, man? I didn't realize that the whole bio would get read. That was like really, I was like, oh, it's still interesting to see how like when people are reading a bio of mine, I'm like, I have this like weird, like, are people looking at me feeling?
Yeah, well, man, I'm a fan of your work. Like I was able to come across. I can't remember where. I'm pretty sure both times were at a festival. The second time was Forum. Someone was talking about your work because they were talking to me. He's like, "Yeah, I have a podcast. This is what it's about." And I was like, "Do you know who Adam Roa is?" And the second time I was like, "Yeah, I looked at his work. Very interesting stuff. Very congruent. Kind of, the deep dive is." The similar to what I'm doing here, and my intention is just to interview people who I find inspirational, who are living it, like the leaders in consciousness or spirituality, or even just doing kind things for others, just being the example, And so yours kind of focuses on the same thing, going deep, having really meaningful conversations, bringing high level concepts and making them applicable. So excited to have you on. And so for the people who don't know you, do you want to give a little background to how you got to where you are today, a little bit about your journey and what you're working on and all the exciting things you're up to?
Yeah, man. So how I got to where I got to, I guess there were two transformative experiences that shaped me probably more than anything else. And I refer back to those to give people an idea of my journey. And my dad's from the Philippines, and so he came to this country in pursuit of the American dream, which in many ways is attached to materialism, like get the house, get the car, and the 2.5 kids, and all of it. And so all along the way of growing up, I attached myself to materialism and achievement and all of that. Long story short, the holy grail of like high school in many ways, at least for me, was Homecoming King. Like that's all the movies are like, if you're Homecoming King, like all the girls love you and like everything's so great. So I won Homecoming King my senior year of high school, and I woke up the next morning and I was like, nothing changed. I'm still like, I still got this teen angst. I still don't know what I'm doing with my life. I still feel shame and sadness and anger. And I don't, the part of me that was actually worse off was that I didn't have a mountaintop anymore. There was no more Holy Grail. Like I'd gotten to this mountaintop and been left feeling super empty, and I didn't know where to go from there. So that was really transformative because I started asking the questions like, well, what if I just follow what everyone else is telling me to do and like go to college, get the career, get the house and the kid? Like, what if I do all that and I wind up in this exact same spot, feeling like I don't know what to do now that I've gotten here? And so I started questioning my path. And then the second most transformative event really in my life was my first ayahuasca ceremony. So I went through a really, really difficult year where everything seemed to be falling apart, and I didn't believe in any sort of spirituality or like any of it. And from one day to the next, ayahuasca just flipped my brain, and there was a complete like 180 on everything in my life. So those are the two most transformative things that got me to where I am now. And I think the other part of your question was like what I'm actually doing now. Is that correct? Did I hear you right?
Yeah, totally. And I'd just like to add that that's very interesting, because it's two kind of fundamental shifts that happen, right? We put out this goal, right? Alan Watts talks about the carrot, right? There's always this dangling carrot, whatever the thing is, a championship or an amount of money or something external, and then you
Uh-huh.
get it, and then it's not the thing. You're like, crap, right? But Jim Carrey has a great quote where he says, I wish that everybody could be rich and famous so they know that that's not the answer. And so once you get it, then you come to that realization. And then, yeah, secondly, ayahuasca seems to have that ability to, that's why they call it medicine, right? It's very potent stuff. So cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now you're doing a lot of different things. The podcast is one of them, your spoken word, workshops, all this kind of thing. So, yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about what you've created in the past and where you're going.
Yeah. So primarily what I do is remind people that they are seen, heard, and loved. And I do that through helping them tap into their creative potential. And creativity is kind of, I think people will look at like an artist and be like, oh, they're creative, or like a dancer or a painter or whatever. But you don't apply that to someone who's like a tech startup entrepreneur. But like creativity is someone who looks at a blank canvas of any kind, even if it's a marketplace, and just says, ooh, I can create something from here into reality. And so that potential, I think, is the superpower of being a human being. Creative energy is so uniquely human in so many ways. And when we tap into that superpower, that's where things like the law of attraction and all of this, we're really exercising and playing in that arena. And so I help people tap into that and unlock parts of themselves that then allow them to live the lives that they really want to be leading. And that can look a lot of different ways. I have a one-man show of spoken word poetry that does that. I coach people one-on-one or in small groups. I create film content that activates people and causes just paradigm shifts. And yeah, so like lots of different ways. I used to think that if I had too many different ways of doing things, people wouldn't take me seriously. And that was just a limiting belief. And now I like love all the different ways. I play a handpan now. Like, do you know what a handpan is?
No.
It's this instrument that I'd never even known it existed until I went to a festival and walked into this magical little place and someone was playing one. I was like, oh. And then like 3 weeks later, I have one, and that's going to be something I implement somehow into my life. And I'm excited about all the different ways that I get to express my creativity because, like I said, I think it's a superpower.
Amazing. Okay, so you've got the spoken word, multimedia, and as you say, you want to make a paradigm shift. So do you go in with a concept that you have already in your mind and kind of how to shake people out of it? Like in hypnosis, they call it a pattern interrupt, right? The more you do a process, the more it's ingrained in your body and your neurons in your brain. So that's why you see somebody who's 80 and it's like grandpa will never change, right? Well, once it solidifies in there, the more and more and more, the harder it gets. So to shake people out of their paradigm, whatever it is, I'm going through the resonance project with Nassim Haramein, and I said back in the day, everybody thought the Earth was flat, and then it's like, no, like we've actually discovered it's round, and it's very slow to make a big paradigm shift culturally, globally, but also the most important thing is individually, right? So do you focus on certain paradigm shifts that you think allow more freedom for an individual? Is that how you kind of go about it, or does it kind of come through an expression of what you want to share?
So, like, I'll give you an example. In my one-man show, I explore things from like the Dakota Access Pipeline to refugee camps to war to food and marriage and like just exploring all these different paradigms, right? Because for me, and this is why I even started my own podcast, is because it's not about what we think, it's how we think. And so the thing that I've noticed about people who are creating massive impact in the world is that they have a different way of thinking. And they may not agree, but helping people tap into ways of thinking that are outside of the way they've been told to think. And so that's what I mean from paradigm shifts in my own life. For example, right now, the thing that's most recent for me was I recognized that I had some blind spots and some limitations around my ability to receive. When a friend of mine at this same festival actually wanted to buy me a $20 like tonic because I wasn't feeling well, and my body contracted, and I was like, I have $20 on me right now. I don't want to owe this person anything. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Like, all of these things happened, and I have the awareness to be present when it's happening. And I don't like anything that contracts me in that way. And so the fact that I got contracted at a $20 bottle of tonic, and yet here I am creating and doing things at a big level, I recognize that there's a limitation to what I'm able to create for myself as long as I have the limitation in my ability to receive. So I went, okay, that's in a blind spot. I know that I want to deepen my receiving. How about I explore my ability to receive through radical generosity? And I'll just start giving, because giving is receiving in so many ways. And I'm just going to start giving and giving and giving. And I started doing that. And all of a sudden, more abundance started coming to me. And I was able to practice receiving with more grace. And because I had been giving so much more, it created a feeling of like, oh, yeah, I'm happy to receive, because I see how much joy people get when I give. Like, I get joy when I give something and someone receives it with joy. And so it just completely, that's a different way of approaching it, in my opinion. Like, that's in my own life. I say, okay, I want to shift this. What ways can I explore how to shift it? And I think that the way that things have operated until now in society have been awesome. They've gotten us to where we are right now. And now it's time for it to evolve into something different, because our, Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been met for maybe the first time on a massive scale, where we don't have to worry about where our next meal is coming from. Some people do, but like billions of people don't. And that's a huge shift. And we get to now change and evolve society in a way that fits that new paradigm.
Amazing. Man, that's so interesting. I've recently had a kind of a deepening and awareness. Same thing for me. It was around receiving. Really good at giving, really good at creating, but there's something about the receiving. And so when I was going through it, I had this, I don't know why, but this download of an infinity loop. You know, an infinity loop, right? So it's like an 8. So for people who don't know, 8 just goes sideways. So and I'm still working on the concept, but the general simplicity of is that I start on the 8 and I have an intention, a desire, or an action, right? An action could be go to the gym, or the intention could be to be healthier, or abundance, or whatever. So I then emit that to the world, and it starts to go up the top of the loop, down to the center point, and then to the other side, which I see is like the universe, ether, and all that kind of stuff, until it hits the other side of the 8, which is the feminine, the receiver, right? Positive, negative. And so by law of the universe, Abraham Hicks and all that stuff, whatever you ask and receive, it's got to come back. So as it's coming back and your desire is coming from the source, you hit the center point again, and that is your consciousness. And your consciousness can either open up to receive. So at that point of asking for health or abundance or whatever, you've matched the frequency of what it is. But once it comes to that center point after a little bit of time, through your own consciousness and free will, you still have to match that energy to receive it and allow it in. And you can either be a resistor or a conductor and allow the frequency to come in to the other side, hit you, and actually amplify what you want. And so I realized that, with the podcast getting busier and the amazing projects that are coming in, time is shortening. And so I work all day and I'm always like, I didn't do enough today. I got so much stuff to do. And never in that moment was it matching the frequency of saying, oh yeah, when this is done, I have so much stuff to do. But I forgot, like, I just had a conversation with Adam Roa, man. Like, this guy's amazing. I learned so much. People got to, view his insights, rather than taking that energy and being that. And so since I've started to do that, it's kind of shifted my own perception, giving me more joy and ease as the responsibility goes up, the numbers go up, whatever the case is. And now I open that valve and experience more receiving, which I think is just another way of saying what you said. But it was really timely because that was like last week.
Yeah, this is super recent for me too. And like you're talking about the infinity, which is the same thing. I see it as, a toroidal field of exiting and coming back, right? And so um, the thing is, people are really good at asking, but they're not aware that most people, the limitation is in the being the space for the receiving, because everything you're asking for is around you and ready to come towards you if you're the space to receive it. And that while there are some people, or let's put it this way, all people probably have some form of limitation in their asking, like, oh, that's unrealistic, I don't think I'm worthy of this, whatever. But in many ways, the more insidious, like underneath thing, when people are like, oh, I don't know why I haven't manifested this, I'm doing all the like law of attraction shit and I got my vision board and whatnot. Well, it's because the receiving end of that isn't being looked at. And within weeks of that experience and really just turning my focus to, okay, now I'm going to explore that and like heal some of my wounding around receiving. I've my abundance level has skyrocketed. Like the external reality around me has shifted in a way where I couldn't have even foreseen it. And that happened within weeks of opening myself up consciously to more receiving.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. And I can just kind of echo that thought. I think receiving is super important. A lot of people, the step first, law of attraction, I got mentored by Michael Lozier, who wrote the book, and he has an NLP process, which is very practical. And so step one is to identify your desire. Makes sense. Step two is to give your desire attention, energy, and focus. Also makes sense. And then step three, which is the most challenging, is to allow it or believe it. And that's where you hear things like fake it till you make it, which I like the upgrade from my friend Marcos, who's faith it till you make it. And in Abraham Hicks and every deep level spirituality thing that I read says, whatever you put out there, ask and you shall receive, or to match the vibration. And the challenge is like, well, how the heck do I match the vibration of abundance when I got to go pay the bills or do this? And that is direct alignment with receiving. And it comes from a limiting thought, right? To just actually do that. Dr. Joe Dispenza gave a really interesting example in his workshop. So he wrote, "You Are the Placebo, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself." Really, really awesome guy. And so he's just talking about having lunch with one of his friends. He's multi-millionaire. He's like, Joe sits down, he gets some food, and he's like, "How are you today?" He's like, "Oh," he's like, "All right. Just lost like $30 million." And Joe's just like about to eat a salad. He's like, "What?" He's like, "You're okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll make it back." And for Joe, it was this realization that he knew the frequency of wealth. He knew that, get it, lose it, whatever, he is tuned in and he knows what that feels like. So there was no concern. And so if we can get to that, that would be the ideal situation. So you said a few things that I think were powerful. Do you have any other tips on like what you would do to receive, or for someone, or that process, at least, hey, think here it is, put it out there, get clear. And then this is a way for you to receive. And for me, the biggest one when I do coaching for people, especially athletes, is it usually comes back to self-worth, where, we want it, we do, but we have this like unconscious fundamental thing of not being worthy of that thing. That's kind of some of the stuff that I've experienced. So just curious if you have insights on that.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, it all comes down to worth. Like, I really do. I think that all our limitations are a matter of self-worth. And so if there's anything in your life that you're wanting that it has not yet shown up, a great framework. I haven't found anything that lies outside the self-worth. I'm not saying it's impossible, but like a great framework in general would be to, what part of me does not yet feel worthy of receiving? And if you ask that question, more often than not, you're on the right track. And I think that have a deep belief that if you ask the question, the answers come. I don't believe that we're disconnected and just kind of floating around on this spinning ball in the universe, right? Like, I really believe that if you ask the questions, you will get the answers. Now, whether or not you know how to tune in to the frequency of those answers is a different story. But that's where things like meditation or coaching or reading certain books or whatever to up-level your awareness. Because, in the spiritual new age community, you hear things like, oh, I'm expanding my consciousness. That statement to me simply means I'm increasing my awareness, because anytime you increase your awareness, you've added more choice to your life. And there is infinite choice to life. Like, what's possible for us is infinite, and yet we have limitations to what we think is possible. And I'm in the game for myself of constantly expanding my awareness so that I have more choice, so that I can see more possibility for myself and for others. And so, yeah, that would be my single piece of advice, most tangibly. What part of me doesn't feel worthy of receiving what I'm asking for?
Amazing, brother. That's a really beautiful answer. I love that. I think that's powerful and important, just to do those simple things. What that brought up for me was I recently did a podcast, maybe it's 2 back now, with Roger Nelson, who's the founder of the Global Consciousness Global Consciousness Project, and he's measuring global consciousness. And to him, through 20 years of study, it's 100% real. And he talks about the noosphere, which is essentially this layer of intelligence around the planet that we can kind of pick up on these answers. So, you could go the spiritual way with it, saying, maybe it's God or source or innate nature, whatever you want. But it's interesting, when you're problem solving your whole life, where does that come from? Does it come from inside you? Those questions and answers and directions, does it come from, a bearded guy in the sky? Like, I don't think so, but he could be one of them throwing him down. But it comes from like kind of a space. And it's not really us that does it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this idea, that fell in to solve my problem, or I asked the question and then I now open to receive answers from wherever.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at time as simply a dimension, right? Like, we live in third dimensional reality. We have time as a dimension that is a container for us. What I mean is linear time. Well, then really, like, things exist outside of linear time in the higher dimensions. Linear time is just something that's necessary once we pass through it down into the third dimension for us to perceive reality. If we didn't have linear time, you and I couldn't have this conversation and be aware of it. And yet, because linear time is simply a dimension, and also something that can be bent and shaped, and gravity has an effect on it, you know what I mean? Like, so once you're beyond that, you recognize, oh, so time doesn't actually exist in the way that I'm thinking about it. So every idea exists. It's all there, because it's not linear. It's just there, like this thing that I'm holding, right? This is every idea. It's all of it. And so really, when we're bringing stuff into existence, we're just tuning ourselves to the frequency of a particular idea, and then it goes whoop, and then we take action on it. And so when you're talking about the Noah field, and you're talking about kind of all this existence, God, source, divine energy, whatever you want to call it, I simply think about it as the ideas that are already present outside of time. And if you've ever spent any time in a psychedelic space like ayahuasca, or a really deep meditation, or something where you recognize, whoa, I feel like I was beyond time for a little bit. Like, that was super weird. Well, then you can recognize how your subconscious, whether you're dreaming or whatever, can tune in to stuff beyond time, and those ideas are all there. They already exist. So I teach a 4-week course that's entirely about how to tap into those frequencies. So this is something I'm really passionate about, because I believe that the more people who can learn to do that and bring those ideas down, the quicker and the better shot we have of actually creating a sustainable model of existence for human beings.
Amazing. Yeah, I 100% agree with all that. Again, to reference Dr. Joe Dispenza, he in his workshops he'll talk about time, space, and space time. It's been explained a bunch to me. I can't put it clearly. If I grab my notes, I could butcher it a little bit. But essentially, in the meditation, what I've kind of discovered is that okay, step one is sport for me. I had an athlete where he fell on his first front flip, right? And he's like, I want to land a front flip. I was like, okay. I was like, and we did like an hour coaching, right? I was like, your mindset's fine. You don't need to read my book, do the videos, all that kind of thing. Don't worry about it. Just visualize that trick an hour a day, every single day until you know you can land it. So 2 weeks, he did start doing it right away. He started doing that day. 2 weeks later, he landed a front flip. 2 weeks after that, he landed the world's first front flip heel clicker. 2 weeks after that, the world's first front flip Superman on a motorcycle. And he recently just did a front flip one seat grab at the Nitro game. So another ridiculous trick. And this is through visualization. Step two is Dr. Joe Dispenza helping people cure themselves of terminal illnesses. So people with cancer and things like 40 years with these debilitating diseases, and sometimes it's 6 months or a year. I actually just met another person who went blind in one eye, and it was supposed to be permanent. And he went through Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, cured his eyesight, came back to full health. And so essentially the way that he describes it is it's beyond space time, and you're picking an option, an infinite potential, and you're matching that frequency and you're calling it forth, right? And then so because time is kind of an illusion, you're just in one infinite moment, eventually it matches and you line up that signal. So there's definitely stories in science to prove that. So even with Dr. Joe, he is bringing in the leading science. So when people have a spontaneous healing or an out-of-body experience where it's like ayahuasca, so DMT will activate. It's exactly what happens in ayahuasca. So I had the DMT activation before I did ayahuasca. So when people were describing that realm, I was like, I've been there, not with the medicine, but then the medicine allows me to stay there for prolonged periods of time, which is awesome, terrifying and cool. And it's beyond time. There is no time there. So I've experienced this directly in the timeless state and with Aya. But
I just go ahead.
No, I'm going to write down the question I had. Go ahead. So I just want to make sure I remember it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing that I think is important to speak to on this subject is that while, because I love Joe Dispenza, it's so funny. I'm starting a 4-week Joe Dispenza workshop starting tonight, actually. So it's funny that he's come up so much in this conversation. But there's your current reality, like your present moment, this present moment that you and I are sharing, is literally the culmination of every decision we've ever made. So it's the culmination of our entire past. So like look around you, that's the culmination of your entire past. And so that's why it's so difficult for people sometimes to call in that new timeline that they want to be living, because basically what gets to happen is that you are embodying and you are holding the energetic frequency of a potential, and that holding, that belief system, that fake it till you make it, faith it till you make it mentality has to be stronger than the frequency of your entire past that's being reflected to you. And so I recognize the inherent difficulty in it, and it's why there are so many people who struggle with the law of attraction, even if they've read the book or if they understand it conceptually. And so one of the reasons it's been so successful for me is because when I took an active leap of faith dive into this journey and this work a few years ago, one of the things that my girlfriend and I did is we gave away 75% of our belongings, gave them away, and put the rest in a small storage unit, and then just began traveling. And that clearing of our entire past energy wipe the slate clean at a level that most people don't experience. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, like I understand all this, but I'm really struggling with it, recognize that the inherent difficulty is in the frequency that's all around you all the time. And the more that you can be aware of it, it'll give you more choice, and you may be able to start taking some conscious action. Like, seriously, get some new sheets for your bed, get some new towels, like little shifts that you're doing with the conscious intention of putting new energy into your life. And say, I'm getting these towels. I'm going to get rid of all my old towels because they smell a little mildewy and I've had them since I was in college. And I'm going to buy some towels that make me feel abundant because they feel like I'm in a 5-star hotel. And every time I use those towels, I'm going to know that I purchased them with the intention of calling in more abundance. And the more that you surround yourself with things that help with holding that new frequency, the easier it'll be.
Yeah, man, 100%. Yeah, I was about to take some notes on what you said there because I 100% agree. You're right on point. And so I've done the Dr. Joe Progressive and Advanced. So I'm super stoked you're going through that because it's just going to gives you more scientific basis and research on what we kind of intrinsically know, and it's like, okay, we know the concept that we need to vibrate it or imagine it or whatever the case is. And then it really just starts to bring down the more understanding. And so, in his work and from my experience as well, it's exactly what you're talking about is your willpower to want to shift has to supersede that of all of your past and every single thing. You have to let go of that. In the mind, it's the neural connections. It's, all of that kind of stuff. And so one of the best ways to do it is in a meditative state. That's why hypnosis is so useful, because when I say, you are abundant or you have your dream job or whatever the case is, your critical factor, your consciousness pops up and says, no, I don't, I have all these issues. And so that's you and your memories and your programming. Well, in a hypnotic state or in a meditative state, you don't have that as much. So you can go in there and you can match the frequency that you want, just like, Brody's front flip or my back flip on a snowboard. I don't know what it feels like over a 70-foot jump yet. Right. But if I can just get into the feeling, when I go to do it, it's now a familiar space. And so what it brought up for me is the importance of will. And so I have Yogananda's book, Scientific Affirmations. And just, Yogananda is so amazing. He's the one who wrote the autobiography of a yogi, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with.
You have a self-realization fellowship like a mile, not even a mile that way.
Right on. Yeah. So he's super next level. And so I remember, I was just reading his book a few weeks ago and he talked about will. And so I had a deepening understanding reading what he talks about. It's like, okay, you have an information or an affirmation or a desire, right? And so let's say your energy is 0 out of 100. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I desire abundance, right? And your energy is like, a 5. You write it down. It's like, I am abundant or I am healthy, right? And what he speaks about there is like your willpower, your force, your life force, your essence has to be so, just like bringing in like the God presence and everything you are and every atom of your being. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like what it made me think of is when, that old story of a mother lifting a car over off her baby and things like that. You bring in that type of willpower into your affirmation, then you are moving towards, you're actually bringing in life force energy that, that's help making you live, plants, birds, trees, that life force. And so that was his main thing in the book that I took away of, when we're creating, add our life force, really generate the energy and the emotion. And that's going to be the actual measurable charge to the quantum field. So that's where Nassim Haramein or some scientists can come in and, measure that. But it's, rather than being a 2 out of 100, you're 98, every ounce of you is willing this reality to come forth. So I don't know if you want to add on that, or I got a question from before too. So I'll let you decide.
No, I think you're full on. And the only thing I'll say is that it's the primary reason why progress looks linear for most people. It's not because progress has to look like incremental. It just is the easiest way for our minds to be like, oh, I can't go from $10 an hour to $1 million a year, but I could go from $10 an hour to $20 an hour. I can visualize that. I can hold that belief. If you can get into the habit of like, oh, I can visualize $1 million a year. Like that's super. Like if you can do that and believe it as strongly as the $20 an hour, then it's totally possible to take that giant jump. I think that in our lives, we're being told over and over, success takes a long time and like hard work pays off and like all these things that we're told that continue to hold us in this idea that hard work and length of time are the two things that are the necessity for success in whatever facet. And yet, every single one of us can think of people who did not get their success that way. Like it just seemed to like spring up. We have the lottery in this country. That lottery is a prime example of people who won hundreds of millions of dollars without doing years and years of hard labor work of building a business. And so despite all those examples around us that it doesn't have to be that way, we limit ourselves into thinking it does. And so I just encourage people to think and believe as big of a dream as you possibly can and can actually hold on to. That's the only thing I would add.
It's wonderful. And I keep seeing your pooch in the background. It's kind of like the glitch in the Matrix, because I'll see him come down and then I won't pay attention. Then he's going down again. 100%.
Let's say hi. Say
hi. What's his name?
This is a little serendipity.
Oh, right, so cute.
She is like awesome. Our child.
I imagine. I think it looks like she might be babied.
She's spoiled. Fully.
Yeah.
Fully.
I think that was an important thing that you added on, because for me, it's a quantum leap, essentially. Rather than going stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you can do literally a wormhole jump up to 50, just like in Super Mario, go in and skip a whole bunch of levels. And all that it requires is you to be able to hold on to that vision or that frequency. And that's where the difficulty lies, because in the linear mind and your past beliefs, right? And everything that you believe is like, oh, okay, 100 grand a year, then 1 million, and then 10 million, right? It's linear. But in Abraham Hicks' law of attraction, Hicks always says that it doesn't matter what you hold on to, whether it's 100,000 or 1 million, the law of attraction doesn't care. Where the challenge is, and if you're using this technique, is it's going to be directly relatable to the amount of belief you have. So a great example Michael Ozier shares is a Plinko. And so 100% desire and 100% doubt equals 0 manifestation. 100% desire, some doubt, it's going to equal some manifestation. 100% desire, no doubt, it's going to be pretty quick manifestation if you can actually manifest that frequency. And I know of people who have done it. I've done it in some things. I've done it a few times in sports. I've done it a few times in the one that I'm really good at is manifesting places to live that are really aligned and abundant. And, it's like, okay, what is abundance? Well, if I'm living in this beautiful house in Sedona with like a new brother of mine in a beautiful space, like it's ridiculous. I'm in abundance. So I'm really good at that. And so what I wanted to ask from before was, when we're talking about timelines and jumping them, and when you're going through and educating people on this, do you have any favorite practices or processes that you like to share, just so people can, have a takeaway from all this stuff? Because what I think you're sharing are really beautiful, deep level concepts. And I'm just curious if you have some favorite tactics to, go through, or just share a little bit of what people would experience.
That's a really good question, because I think that most people know like visualization, right? Visualization is, I don't think that it's very complicated in terms of, it's simple but not easy, right? So manifestation, when we're talking about it's believing it and seeing it, it's not an intellectual thing. It's an emotional thing. It's can you like feel what it feels like to be abundant? And so one practice that I'm in, for example, and I started this years ago, was every time a receipt is given to me that has the opportunity to tip, doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if I'm getting takeout. It doesn't matter. Like anytime someone hands me something and it says tip on that line as I'm signing it, I leave some form of tip. And I didn't used to do that. Like there will be times like if I was getting just like picking up something really quickly, or if it was for some service that I didn't think you would ever tip for. Like, but for me, that was a way of saying if I was a billionaire, I would leave tips all the time. Like I've been a waiter, I've been a server and a bartender. Like I would just tip everyone all the time. And so that was one way for me to start doing it. And it may just be $1, you know what I mean? But like $1 is a lot. If I go somewhere and I'm like, hey, can I get that? Oh, it's $2.50. I don't have any cash. Here's my card. It's $2.50. There's a little thing for tip at like the gas station or whatever. It's like, here's $1. It's just, the point is that I look for ways to not, faith it till you make it. I look for ways to embody what it is that I want to become. And the more that you can take action, because action is the final step in the manifestation process. So the action that you take is the most direct, you'll get the most direct feedback on what you're creating in your life. And so if you are taking action, then you get immediate feedback. And so if you want to create something for yourself, what is the action that most aligns? Because the belief systems, and you've touched on this, like the unconscious belief systems that we may not be aware of, that are running our life on so many levels, part of the way that you can approach that is through hypnosis, plant medicine, coaching people, books, like all of that stuff to help to like shine a light on some of those unconscious processes. And you can approach it from the other direction and just start taking the action that goes against those belief systems. And one of those for me was, a lot of them have been around scarcity. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to start tipping. And I started using a mantra. This was years ago. I don't use it anymore. But when I was in a lot of scarcity, I said, and I had to put everything on a credit card because I was like, I don't really have this in my bank account. Like, for every $1 I spend, 2 come back to me. And so what that did was that allowed me to start spending money feeling like I was making money. And so that was, again, a shift, because I have some wealthy friends who are like, yeah, I went to sleep last night and I woke up and I made like $600,000, because they have these processes set up where wealth is happening all the time. And for me, I didn't have that set up, but I could just view every $1 I spend as making me more abundance. And so those are just ways throughout time that I've said, okay, this is what I'm working on. And this is just a really simple way that I can just start to implement it into my life, because I think that the more little ways that you can do it, the little ways are easier to like emotionally relate to. And when you have 10 little ways, that's just as effective as one like really big way that you have to convince yourself and like work to believe.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting insight. I totally agree with that. And I like the 10 little ways is just as good as one big way. I can relate to that in athletics and sport, doing the Pavel Satsulin workout, and it's 3 sets of 3 deadlift every second day. And so I skateboard and snowboard, and I don't want to go to the gym if my legs are going to be blown out, right? And so I started doing this, and in 3 months, I'm deadlifting over 400 pounds at 170 pounds, and people who are massive are just looking at me, and I'm like, I know, I'm confused too. But it's like very minimal, little.
Sorry, is he the guy who invented the kettlebell?
He's not the guy who invented it, but he is the guy who popularized it in North America. Yeah, okay. He's rad. So it's a few hacks, so it's a fitness hack, getting, relatable experience. It's not me going to the gym and blowing myself out once a week, right? It's just doing little things here and there, like a pull up here and there, stuff like that. So I totally resonate with everything that you just said there. Crap, and I wanted to add something else onto it, but there's so many questions I want to ask you as we get into this. I guess for doing the deep dive podcast and having really interesting conversations with a lot of amazing high vibe people, what for you are some of the funnest, most enjoyable or meaningful things to discuss? Like maybe questions or concepts, or, in having these things, what are you most excited to discover, learn, grow, talk about, that kind of thing?
Oh, I'm a fan of anything that challenges me intellectually, like anything in that realm. So like we started talking about like pulling ideas outside of the temporal realm, right? Like that kind of stuff I could geek out for like forever. And I also love really grounded conversations of like, okay, what do the systems look like for more sustainable human existence? What do those actually tangibly look like? One of the things that I do, so I do consulting work, and the consulting work that I do for people in their businesses and for themselves is what I call human optimization. And as a human optimization strategist, what I'm doing is I'm taking like a holistic view from back here and being like, okay, where are the avenues that we can optimize efficiency, effectiveness, create bigger impact? And so any conversations that help me rewire how I'm viewing any topic is really beneficial, because the more ways that I can view the world, the better I become at being adaptable in different instances. Because one thing that I've had to get some healing around is my attachment to right and wrong, and the idea that there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way. And I've really let go of that concept and gotten to a place where everyone's telling a story. Everyone thinks that they're right. And who's to say that they're not? Like, I don't actually know. I know what works for me. And if someone's coming to me for coaching or consulting or listening to my podcast, they probably resonate with my viewpoint on a lot of things. Maybe not everything, but on a lot of things. And so the more ways that I can just view situations and view topics and view society and view spirituality, then when I'm talking to you, I can come at it from different angles. Where if I'm talking to like my dad, I'm going to come at it from a completely different angle when discussing certain topics. And it's not because I'm being inauthentic. It's because I think it's really important as human beings, especially people in leadership positions who are creating impact in the world. I think it's really important to meet people where they're at, and not. I try not to put my messages out in a way that ostracizes people and makes them feel like they're dumb or they don't belong, or like, and I really want to help people understand, like, I get it. Like, I understand why you're pissed off that Donald Trump won the election. I understand that you're really upset and you don't feel fully safe in this country currently. I get it. And it doesn't change the fact that he's a human being. And the only way to solve this situation, in my opinion, is to continue to shower that human being with love, even as we protest and even as we work toward whatever. Like, it doesn't change the fact that we can do it from a space of love. And so, yeah, that was kind of a random place that I went there, but I was thinking about it because of my one-man show, because I speak to the election and what happened after the election, where I saw people on my Facebook feed who post like motivational memes and wonderful, podcasts with Matthew Belair and like all of these things. And all of a sudden, these people were like, "You mother effing racist. Like, what happened? I can't believe I live in this country." And it's like, whoa, yesterday you were posting about how everything is love. And today you are just spouting anger and hate. And yet these people felt justified in doing that. And there's no, like, I don't know about you, but no one's ever convinced me of anything by yelling at me louder. And so, like, I think it's really, really valuable for us to understand that the more open-minded we are, open-minded doesn't mean that you're easily fooled, and open-minded doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything you hear. Open-minded just means a willingness to examine how someone else is viewing the situation. And so I don't know if I answered your question at all, but like, that's a bunch of stuff that I just like spouted out.
Brother, no, that's wonderful, man. It made me think of a few different things I wanted to touch on and add to that, because I 100% agree. And so, when you're talking about right and wrong, in Buddhism and Zen, it's like there is no right and wrong, there just is. And right and wrong is right into the duality trap. And furthermore, I went through this course, so I'm going through G Life right now. It's this guy Core Love. It's super super intense stuff. And one of the things, he had these videos, they're not on YouTube anymore, which is a bummer. He's taken them all down because he's working on something else, but he calls it the formula for truth. And this guy is next level. I always start the video and I was like, oh my God, 2 hours in, I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Comes back to simple concepts. So the formula for truth, business, relationships, health, and science. And essentially, and this is, each of them are 2 hours. So I'm just going to break it down really simply. You go 0 to 90 on a scale. So let's say 0 is flat Earth, and then the other one is, circular Earth, right? Or it could be a saint and a murderer. It could be whatever the polar opposites are, right? And so 45 degrees is in the middle. And so when we meet the murderer or the flat earth person or the round earth person or whatever, so I used flat earth, round earth, because I got flat earth in like just the best way ever. It was so awesome. And now, do I believe it's a flat earth right now? No, but was the argument super convincing and interesting? Yeah. And was like all the videos. So basically what I did when it started happening is I fully opened up. I didn't say I'm attached to a round earth. I'm like, what do you got? And so because I open up to that, I at 45 open up to that whole 45 degree on the other end of the spectrum. Same with being like a racist or somebody. It's like, okay, like why, rather than attacking the person, say you're racist, terrible human being or whatever, like why are you doing this? Like, what's the deal? And like, it doesn't mean you need to believe them, but you open up. And basically what he talks about in this formula for truth is like, there's going to be a gold nugget somewhere, because it's just information. Doesn't mean you need to have it, but by opening up and looking at it fully, now you're not shutting off information. Right. So now in all things in your life, you're opening up to information. And so once you get that information, it's your free will and choice to do what you want rather than judging. Now you've lost 45 degrees. And so if we don't go, the flat earth, round earth, or like a saint versus a murderer, and we just go kind of in between, whether right wing or left wing politics or your thoughts over, when you just fully allow that other person to express in a non-judgmental way with compassionate questioning, you've now opened up a whole new world of information for yourself. And it's now you kind of, where it goes next level is you change the fundamental operating system of your brain. So you're absorbing way more information than the average person because of your willingness to receive. And I'm not going to go on Fox News and, that's not the point. You find people in conversations that you resonate with, and that's when you really get massive results. So that's what it made me think. And I think it's super, super valuable to let go of the good and bad, right or wrong, and to be open in that space, because we are in times where things are shifting so quickly, and we need this radical compassion, radical openness, radical self-love, and love for others. Exactly like you said, 2 days before it's like Zen, get into the moment and spread love. And then the next day you're just spending hours just sending out hate to the world and Trump and everything. It's like, no, what do we do? And that's the embodiment. So I think that's really powerful stuff, man.
Yeah, it's a big thing. And, to go super hippy dippy on it for a moment, like, light is information. Information is light. And so when you shut yourself down to information, you're actually shutting yourself down to light. You're shutting yourself down to higher frequencies of existence. That if what a lot of us desire is to exist in higher frequencies, and to do that, an easier way to do that is to allow the light in, and light is information. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Another wonderful way to put it. So, man, I have, as we've gone through, I've written down more questions I wanted to dive deeper on and things like that. I know that you've got some more stuff coming about your day, and we've crushed a good hour. So what I wanted to leave is,
I could do another like 10, 13 minutes or something.
Cool. So what I'll do in that case is I'll kind of I'll ask this question and we'll see how it flows from there. But for you, in this podcast, was there anything that you'd wished that I asked, or that you are really, excited to talk about? Anywhere that you want to go?
I'm in full trust. I loved that, before we started, you took the time to set the intention together. And so I'm really in a flow state and surrender into, as long as I stay clear on my intentions throughout a day and throughout a week and throughout a month, that whatever pops up is what's supposed to pop up. So I have no agenda.
Okay, cool. All right. So in that case, I'll give you I'll give you a statement from something that you said before when I wanted to recap, because it became nice and clear for me when we were talking about the incremental actions. So you're doing your meditation on wealth or health or something, and everything remains the same in your external world. So it's harder to get that coding. So then, through doing some brain training institute with my friend Julian's next level stuff and the core love stuff, is really next level stuff. The way my mind thought about these little incremental things where you're going out throughout your day in little bits of abundance, right? So most people have a hard wiring where they go and it's just a pattern, and those neurons and those neural nets get ingrained more. So as you start peppering up these little changes, these little actions, right? The more attention, energy, and focus you give something, the more you get of it. So all these little incremental movements. Now the neurons in your brain are these different neurons are firing, and then they're creating bigger neural nets. And then so your body is all energy. So because we are changing our energy, our neural makeup, it's creating, electrical energy in the brain, literally. And then the body now changes the electromagnetic field and all that kind of fun stuff. And we are in a field of information that's electromagnetic and all that kind of fun stuff. So we have to match, it has to come back whatever signal we're matching. So I kind of see when you were talking about these incremental movements, it's incremental coding. We're literally coding our mind. It starts in the hard wiring of our brain, and that is changed through our free will, and it changed through our awareness. So as we look and we ask great questions, we open up to ideas and options, we can then choose our coding, and our coding comes from our actions, and it comes from literally the makeup of our brain. So all those little actions are the things that are going to allow our body to vibrate in a different way, send a different signal, so to speak. Rather than 70.2 FM, we go up to 90.1 FM or whatever the case is. And so we've actually changed the coding in our mind. So I just wanted to share that and see if you had any thoughts on the way that I was perceiving the power of your incremental movements.
No, I fully agree with that. I think that what that brings up for me is just a recognition of why I am such a big supporter of healing work and healing modalities, such as plant medicines. I think that they play a major role, psychedelics, whether it's mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, DMT experience, those things are doing are rewiring your brain. And now we have the science to back that up, because you have people who are taking some LSD and then getting under like an MRI or a CAT scan or something, and you can see the brain and basically just see that, so they'll do these experiments where they play like different slides of different images or whatever while they're in this machine, and they're noticing that at control, at neutral, the brain lights up in the same way each time. When you see a kitten, it lights up this way for each individual person, right? Kitten this way. When you see images of war, it lights up this way, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when you're on a psychedelic, now you light up differently. There's new neural networks, there's new neural pathways that are firing when you're seeing the same imagery. And so what that shows is that the role that psychedelics can play is by just opening up new neural pathways. And by doing that, it breaks that state, and it breaks the kind of same rut that happens when you think about war, when you think about this, or when you think about that. It's just different. And now you're doing a massive recoding, to use your analogy, at a faster rate because you've taken the limiter off. And so I think that is just should be spoken about, because I don't know that enough people in the transformational leadership space openly talk about it. I know so many people who have massive followings, who don't mention the fact that iboga, ayahuasca, San Pedro, whatever, has played a big role in their development. And I think that's a disservice. And so I openly speak about it and recommend it, while the caveat of saying it's illegal in the United States to take most of these substances. So I'm not telling you to go buy it or sell it, but I do believe in their therapeutic uses for sure.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I would say a good, I don't know, 30% of my podcast, 40% have done ayahuasca, and I know firsthand the power of it, and it was transformational for me. It really helped me level up. There's a lot of science maps. If you look at the multidisciplinary
of psychedelic studies.
Thank you. That's it. And so that's online, and they're doing tons of great research and work. And I know it personally. You know, the problem is people are doing it as teens without any guides, under the wrong circumstance, going to a party. But totally flip that and make it a therapeutic resource. Super powerful. And I see a modern resurgence of shamanism, even just doing mushroom ceremony with your friends. You know, I have so many great people that I know are well connected, and you know, they're afraid of mushrooms now, and they're like, oh, this and that. And I was like, it's because you have no idea right now. You're fully in the fear base. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of. But you get stuck in this old coding, and you know, you don't have to do it. But I totally resonate with the importance of people who are in spaces of influence to talk about it. It's kind of like taking this magic pill, and you're not going to share with everyone. You know, it's like, oh, I have these deep insights and I did it through my 4-step process. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You know, you're using.
No, you took a bunch of mushrooms and then you meditated. And that's a huge part of it too. Don't like hide that fact, because then what I think part of that is, one, like, I know for myself, I felt like people would I felt like people wouldn't take me seriously. I felt like people would think, oh yeah, you're just like a druggy hippie or something like that. That was something that I had to work through. Then, but I also feel like there's an aspect of salesmanship that is very much in the transformation, personal development space, where it's like, almost like this Western medicine model of like, do you actually want people to get better, or do you want them to remain sick so they keep coming back for the medication? And there are few things like, I listed 2 major transformative events in my life, and one of them was a plant medicine. And it is not to say that I've hired coaches and I continue to take workshops and I continue to read books. I'm like a personal development addict. And simultaneously to that, very few things have had the massive shifts in my life the way plant medicine does. And I want everyone, I'm practicing radical generosity. I believe that if everyone's in a space of high vibration, all the issues of scarcity and stuff go away. So I think it's really important to be talked about for sure. And I'm glad that you do. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. I 100% resonate with that as well. And I think that when you have an experience, so for me, again, the first time I had an experience of DMT Kundalini activation, that was through lots and lots and lots of meditation. Now, that took a long time. When I first did ayahuasca, I was like, oh man, could have just taken this drink shortcut. Now, all the work that I had done had made the ayahuasca experience what it was and who I am and all that kind of stuff. But what it does is it doubles down on all that work, all that coaching, those self-development, the looking, you finding, you know, it never ends, this process of uncovering and ascending and growth. You go to a place where you're like, oh my goodness, I am a child. And what's important is for me to love myself and love others and take care of the planet. It's so fundamental. But then it gives you that vision, that direct experience where your brain never goes back to normal, or what it was, what is it like when the mind expands or something, it never goes back to its original constraints, something like that. And then it gives you that inner experience that you could take to all things and apply to sport, or, that's my statement, sport or life or anything. It's like, so even, when I work with athletes, it's beyond your sport. It's like, hey, you want to be great at sport. That's one element of who you are. Now, how can you take that and inspire others and yourself to create the life you want? You know what I mean? And so with ayahuasca, it's taking the steps to live mindfully, to, actually walk the talk, which is the most important thing. Same with Burning Man. It's like so many people go to Burning Man, and then how many of them walk the talk outside of Burning Man? And what made me sad was I met these amazing people, and a good chunk just don't. And it's like, oh man, like this is you 10 days out of the year and you fully embrace it. But then how much do you embrace outside? And like, so I think that's what plant medicine really has that power to do. And so I think that if you are in a position of influence, you've done this absolutely transformative thing and you hide it, you're not being authentic with yourself or with people who are coming to you, because you found some piece of magic that was really useful, that activates what's in all plants, animals, humans, everything, and you're hiding it. So I don't think that's honest to anybody. So I like how you bring that up.
Yeah, it's super important, and I love that you are so involved in sports. I have a pretty big sports background as well. So like that is, I think of sports. I make sports analogies all the time to my clients, and I think sports are such a crucial like microcosm to life in general. And I'm a huge fan, which is interesting because like the deeper I go into kind of the new age spiritual community, I feel like less and less people are actively like watching or engaged in sports, so that makes me kind of sad. But yeah, with that said, man, I think that the I just lost my train of thought. I think that the big thing about it right now that I want to add as a caveat to our conversation around psychedelics is that in the Western world, we are so focused on synthesizing, like bigger, faster, stronger. And in indigenous society, the ceremonies and the medicine were a way of life. And you had the entire tribe supporting you in the journey. You had a shaman who acted almost like a coach who could help you integrate the experience. And in this Western society, the thing that I'm seeing is a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to do ayahuasca on Saturday and Sunday, and then I'll be back at work on Monday. And you're like blown open, and then all of a sudden you're back to work doing a job that you didn't like to begin with, surrounded by people who are super negative, and you're like, what the hell is happening? And that's just, you know what I mean? Like DMT is super popular on Wall Street right now, where you have Wall Street guys who are going and smoking DMT in their car at lunch because it's a 15-minute thing, and then going back. And I really caution people, because I feel like the integration piece is vital. It's just as important as the experience itself. So if you've been listening to us and you're like, oh, I do, this is like the third sign, or like now I'm open to it, or whatever, I really feel like one of the biggest aspects of this that often gets overlooked is giving yourself the highest probability for sustainable embodied change from these experiences. And whether that's giving yourself a couple days on either end of the experience for just like you time, or it's hiring a coach who's understands that process and can help facilitate an integration over the next couple of weeks, like whatever it is, value the integration as being a part of the experience.
Yeah, brother, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. 100% hard agree. I know you gotta run, so I'll leave you with this. Make sure people can find you. So add that at the end, and just anything that you want to leave the listeners with before we head off, and where we can find you. And just thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom and being who you are, man, taking the deep dive to be the embodiment of what you talk about, because you resonate it, and that's important. So thanks for that, and sharing all your wisdom and gifts.
I've enjoyed this conversation very much. I can tell we have a lot. We could have probably done this for like 6 hours, bro. So I'm excited for the time that you and I are in the same space, and I can have you on the deep dive, and or we'll just do another one of these in the future. We'll see. My last parting, well, let me go to what I know in this moment, which is how people can find me. People can find me on Facebook, Adam Roa. You can find me on Instagram, adam.roa. My website is adamroa.com. And I have a podcast called The Deep Dive with Adam Roa, and that is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, all your podcast apps. I would say that the thing I want to leave people with is that right now I'm really focused, and I'm talking a lot about a new paradigm. It's important for people to understand that I don't actually know what that looks like. I just know a feeling I have inside me. And what's valuable to understand from like a grounded perspective is that the way that our minds work is we operate and have operated for basically all of humanity in a zero-sum game mentality, which means that there's a winner and there's a loser. That's a scarcity mentality. There's not enough for everyone. Someone has to lose. Even in our business, like when you go to school, I got a business degree. They tell you like market share. Like if you gain market share, someone else loses market share. Like there's this zero-sum winner-loser thing. And to create a new paradigm and a new sustainable human system, that gets to be rewired and that gets to be changed so that we can see a system where everyone wins. And that has never existed in human history as far as we know, which means that in order for us to create something that's never existed, we cannot create that solution from the same level of consciousness. We get to now expand our consciousness in order to have the tool set and mindset available to us to actually generate and create a new sustainable model. So my plea, my encouragement, my invitation to you is to recognize that arguably the most important thing that you can do in life right now is to open your mind and expand your awareness and expand your consciousness to new ideas and new ways of thinking. Because whatever gets to be created for us to survive as a species, because the earth, it's not about saving the earth will be here long after we're gone. If we want to create something that works for everyone and sustains life on this planet, then that process of expansion and new ways of thinking and tapping into new ideas and rewiring the brain and listening to more, Matthew Belair podcasts, like all of that is a crucial component for the new paradigm that I'm speaking of. And so, yeah, I'm going to leave you guys with that. So like, please, an invitation to really take that journey inward and just expand.
Amazing, brother. I love that. It's such a hammer close, dude. Mic drop. Leave the stage. But yeah, a really beautiful conversation, man. Thank you so much for your time and all your work. Thank you for coming on today and who you are. And it was a real privilege, my friend.
Thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Check you in the next one. Peace.